All right, welcome to the special edition of Go Vote Omaha, a candidate forum for Legislative District 11, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Rebecca Armstrong Langle, and I'm the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha co-president and your moderator for tonight. The League never supports or opposes political parties or candidates. We simply present this forum solely for voter education. The format is as follows. Each candidate will get 1 minute opening statements, followed by questions prepared by League members. Each candidate will answer every question and have up to 90 seconds for that answer. Following the questions, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. We will alternate speaking order throughout the forum. A timekeeper will signal candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop speaking. Before the forum, the candidates flipped a coin to determine initial speaking order. I will introduce them now in that order. The two candidates running for Legislative District 11 are Mr. Fred Conley and Mr. Terrell McKinney. So we're going to start out with opening statements from Mr. Conley.
My name is Fred Conley. I'm seeking the office of legislator for District 11 because of my interest in continuing serving the community. Graduate from North High School, North Omaha, and I've lived in the northeast part of the city for over 40 years. I'm married with 3 grown children and look forward to bringing to the legislature all of my experience, city council, Papio Natural Resources District Board, a gang of nonprofit organizations in the community, and presently I'm vice chairman of the Papio Natural Resources District Board. And I think I have a wealth of experience, and I'm very interested in continuing my service, not only to the northeast part of Omaha, but the city, greater city, and the state of Nebraska.
All right, thank you. Mr. McKinney, you are up next.
Okay, thank you for having me. Again, my name is Terrell McKinney. I'm an Omaha native. I also attended Omaha North High School. I have a bachelor's in sport business management, a master's in business administration, and I'm currently attending Creighton Law School. I'm a father and a community advocate, and I've worked as a hunger action advocate focused on food insecurity across the state. Also worked as a community organizer focused on Medicaid expansion. Also coach wrestling at Omaha North, and I'm also assistant wrestling coach with a youth club in the community. I serve on the board of 2 local nonprofits, and I'm also the CD2 representative for the Nebraska Democratic Black Caucus. This election is the most important of our lifetime. Entered are choices that will decide the economic future of our community, the education of our children, the long-term health of our community, and the relationship that our community has with the criminal justice system. These times call for a new approach and direction to lead our community into the future. What worked in the past won't work in 2021. I'm Terrell McKinney, and I hope to earn your vote November 3rd.
So we are going to start with our first question. What legislation will you introduce to help Nebraskans recover from the impact of COVID? And Mr. McKinney, you are up first.
I will introduce legislation to incentivize small business growth and entrepreneurship growth across the state, but also in the district. My district currently has the worst median income in the state, which is a little over $26,000. And we have to do whatever we can to change that. We also have the highest poverty rate, especially for children and seniors. And we have to do something about that. This COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted a lot of disparities. We had already had the highest unemployment rate in the state, and I'm sure this pandemic is going to increase that. We also have to build infrastructure to repurpose abandoned homes, buildings, and factories in the community to bring back a vibrant community that we know exists in North Omaha. And we need to just have a diversified economic system across the state. We have to look at new revenue streams to bring to our state and also into the district.
Great. Mr. Conley, same question.
Well, my interest will be in working with the state to bring more financial resources to this area. Over the years, we've had interest from the city and the county in terms of providing financial resources to various projects. But we've had very little financial resources from the state. And since the state got the CARES money and the city did not qualify because it didn't have 500,000 people, they've had to get money from the county to do various things, like providing for mental health services. I think the county provided $22 million through the CARES money given to them by the county to help those organizations that are providing mental services in the area. So I think the state needs to provide more resources, and I plan on working with the Department of Economic Development of the state to find out how we package programs to provide incentives for more economic development and job training in North Omaha.
All right, thank you. Next question is, Nebraska is the only state not to continue with emergency supplemental food assistance beyond July. Do you agree with this decision by our governor, and would you, as a legislator, do anything about it? Mr. Conley, you're first.
I do not agree with the governor's position on this matter. They have food, provide money to provide food incentives for citizens who are in desperate need of food security services. And I would work with those in the legislature who have the same interest in using those funds to address those who have economic needs.
And Mr. McKinney, your answer.
No, I would not agree with the governor, and I will do whatever I can once I'm elected to make changes to that process. This pandemic is new. We don't know what the long-term effects of this pandemic are going to be for our communities, and I think it's just a lack of leadership on the governor's behalf to not continue this program for citizens of our community. I've talked to members of the community already, and a lot of them are worried about what are they going to do next. They were relying on those services, and going forward, it's just going to be an issue that we have to address, and we need somebody in the legislature that'll work tooth and nail with the community to fight anything that the governor does to try to restrict their access to services.
All right, our next question. According to racialequitytools.org, structural racism in the United States is the normalization and legitimization of an array of dynamics, historical, cultural, institutional, and interpersonal, that routinely advantage whites while producing cumulative and chronic adverse outcomes for people of color. How should Nebraska deal with structural racism in its institutions? Mr. McKinney, you are up first.
Our state has to take a hard look at itself and really start breaking down those systems, because they've oppressed my community for years. We have to put equity into those systems to make sure that just because you're offering a service doesn't mean it's always equitable. We have to make sure business leaders are not just writing letters and saying we agree. We need equity in our community. We need equity in education to make sure that all kids in Nebraska are getting the same education. We need equity in the criminal justice system in order to make sure that all are treated equally and evaluated equally. We need equity in economics. For too long, North Omaha has been neglected. You look at the rest of this city and look at other districts, and they're all sprouting up, while this community looks the same as it did when I was a kid, and in some cases even worse. So we need equity to address systematic racism in the state.
Great. Mr. Conley.
Well, I think a review among various organizations, business, educational systems are looking at ways that they can provide more equity into their area. I know UNL is doing that now. Corporations are doing that also because of the unrest that's not only happening in Omaha, but is happening across the country. The question is, as a senator in Nebraska, the question is, how can I be of assistance? And what kind of legislation will they need to speed that process of review? And I certainly would want to work with them to do that. I know the legislature wants to take a look at some of the complaints that the 2-day meetings that they had, the Judiciary Committee had in Omaha and in Lincoln in terms of what the overall legislature can do. And they weren't able to have an extra session to do that, but they're going to be taking at some of the comments that were made at those hearings about proposed and give proposed legislation in January. And I hope to be a part of that discussion and support things that are going to speed the process in terms of review and more equity in our system.
The next question is, what do you think about privatization of schools, and what does an equitably funded public school system look like? Mr. Conley, you are first.
Well, one of the issues that I'm very passionate about is support of public education. And I'm going to see what I can do to continue to provide financial resources to the greater metropolitan schools, because those are the ones that require more resources in terms of educating kids in this state. So I'm very interested in Toloso, the funding formula that they've used historically that probably needs some changes now to provide more financial resources to the greater metropolitan schools, both in Lincoln and in Omaha.
And Mr. McKinney.
I'm not sold on private schools, but I also understand parents that are seeking alternatives. Our state needs to do things to raise the standards to make them more equitable across the state. We also need to raise teacher pay so that teachers are actually energized to go into these schools. We also need cultural education in all schools. Black lives need to matter in all schools. We need better education about the history of not just Black people, but all people of color across all spectrums. Currently, District 11 has one of the lowest graduation rates in the state and the lowest college graduation rate in the state. And that all goes back to equity. We have to make sure that all kids are getting the same education across the state. It shouldn't be that a kid could go to Millard and get a better education than a kid in OPS. Right now, a kid could graduate high school with probably a D- average in OPS, and that's a problem. We have to change that. So we change that by raising the standards to make them equitable. We change that by raising teacher pay. We change that by providing more cultural education in schools, and that has to happen. But we also need more mental health and trauma-based counseling in schools, because a lot of kids that are going into the school to prison pipeline are being pushed out because they are being labeled as bad. And that's really not the case in a lot of situations. We need individuals in our schools to understand our kids. So so it has to be equitable, and we need not just teachers, but all administration and staff to be culturally competent to do.
Sorry, I have to cut you off.
All right.
I know you were on a roll there. Our next question is LB 1060, which was vetoed by Governor Ricketts, included hair textures and protective hairstyles within the definition of race under the Nebraska Fair Employment Practice Act. Do you support this bill? Why or why not? And would you have overridden the governor? Mr. McKinney, you are first.
Yes, I support this bill because the treatment of treatment of women, especially Black and brown women in this country, has been appalling for centuries. I have a daughter, I have a mother that I'm very close with, I have sisters, and we have to make sure that they are treated equally and equitably in the workplace and in just generally in our society. I would never feel comfortable I wouldn't feel comfortable sending my daughter into the workplace if I knew that just because her hair is curly, an employer will judge her based upon that, and that's a problem. So yes, I would support the legislation if it's brought up again, because it has to happen. We have to make sure that all women feel comfortable going to work every day.
Sure. And Mr. Conley.
Yes, I would support an override of this bill. I happened to be at Hy-Vee and ran into Michaela Kavanaugh, who is the sponsor of the bill, and I asked her, why did the governor veto it? And she said she was surprised because she worked through some things in the bill with the legal counsel of the state and thought everything was in order. And if the governor had some issues with the bill, he should have communicated with the sponsor of the bill as to how it might be improved. But I think it was necessary. It should have been passed, and I would support it And I think she's going to bring it back up in the next legislative session.
All right, so our next question is, if you are elected, you will be dealing with redistricting in 2021. What do you intend to do to make sure redistricting is a fair process and that Nebraska does not end up with gerrymandered districts? Mr. Conley, you are first.
I've served on the Papio NRD for 20-some years, and I went through several redistricting of the NRD. And what we've done is we at least got a map of Metropolitan Area Planning Association to do the redistricting, which takes it out of the political arena, so to speak. I think we either need an independent commission to do the redistricting, so no one is accused, Republicans or Democrats are accused of putting together guidelines that favors one or the other. We could either use MAPA, Metropolitan Area Planning Association, or establish an independent commission made up of independents, Democrats, and Republicans. They come up with what the guidelines should be and finally approved in the state of Nebraska.
And Mr. McKinney.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. If you are elected, you will be dealing with redistricting in 2021. What do you intend to do to make sure redistricting is a fair process and that Nebraska does not end up with gerrymandered districts?
I will make sure that the process is independent of the legislature. It has to happen in a way to make it less partisan, so senators aren't creating districts for themselves. We also have to maintain a minority majority, which is District 11. And we have to stop anybody that's trying to make changes to that. So make sure we keep it independent to prevent senators from creating districts for themselves, making sure that it's nonpartisan, and also keeping a minority majority in our state, which has to happen.
Great. Our next question is, in your legislative district, what are the top 2 issues most important to your constituents? And Mr. McKinney, you are first.
The first issue is economic equity and opportunity. When I talk to community members on the phone and when I walk around and lit drop and text message, I hear it a lot, that what are you going to do to bring jobs and bring back economy in the district? The next is the criminal justice system. Too many members of this district are disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system. I know a lot of individuals from the district that are in our state penitentiary and our county jail. So those would be the top 2 issues: economic equity and opportunity, and criminal justice reform. And also, within criminal justice reform is police accountability, which we've seen all summer with the social unrest.
And Mr. Conley.
I think there are 2 issues. I think jobs and job training is very important to people in the district. Affordable housing is another issue that's very important. If we're going to get people to stay in the district, we've got to expand the housing opportunities for those who have moved out of the district so they can move back into the district, and also continue to provide job training through our community colleges throughout the state, so that people can earn a wage that can elevate them for better housing. And healthcare is another issue that's very much important to people in my district.
And our final question will be, the medical marijuana initiative was ruled ineligible to be on the ballot. So it's likely that this will be introduced again in the next session. Would you support a medical marijuana bill, and why or why not? Mr. Conley.
Yes, I would, because I've experienced the need. It's medical marijuana. And I experienced the need through a family member of my daughter who had cancer, who really the pain was in many ways unbearable. And medical marijuana would have helped her through those times when she needed to take something to relieve the pain. So I'm very much in support of the bill and would be in support if it's reintroduced in terms of the petition drive, which I supported the first time.
And Mr. McKinney.
Yes, I would support it. Medical marijuana is needed for reasons Fred stated. There's a lot of individuals dealing with chronic issues that don't want to use prescription pills or prescription medicine. They would rather seek alternatives to just digesting a bunch of pills every day. I think it's a shame that our state prevented that from happening, prevented the initiative from being on the ballot. And I would do whatever I can to bring it back in the legislature. And I would also support recreational marijuana use in our state.
Great. So those are our questions. So now we're going to move on to our closing statements. So we're going to flip the order. We're going to start with Mr. Terrell McKinney for his closing statement.
Throughout this discussion, hopefully we answered your questions. It's my priority to serve this community. I will continue to be present and hold myself accountable to you all. Through effective leadership, listening, continuous relationship building, and community engagement, which are all characteristics of an informed, energized leader. I'm endorsed by Senator Ernie Chambers, a prime example of true leadership. Once elected, I will build on that foundation to take our community into the future. Our community is in need of leadership that has a community-first mindset to represent our district in the legislature. Our community is in need of a leader who will not rely solely on experience. We need a leader who will not be afraid to roll up their sleeves and get to work on the real issues that are facing our community. I didn't rethink my platform. This has been my platform prior to the pandemic and social unrest in our community. Prior to running, I understood that work needed to be done in order to get voters to support me, and I've been doing that. I haven't relied on my past or my community contacts. My report card is the work that I've continued to put in since I first announced my candidacy last August. As someone that has lived and worked in our community, we cannot go back to business as usual. That's what my opponent represents. I'm Terrell McKinney, and I hope to earn your vote. Start early, September 28, 2020, or Election Day, November 3rd, 2020. To learn more about me and my campaign, visit my website, peopleforterrellmckinney.com.
All right. Thank you. And Mr. Conley, you are up for your closing statement.
My purpose in being involved in seeking the legislature is to continue to lead and serve this community. I've served in the United States Air Force, military. I came back to this community, have grown a family in North Omaha, have never left the area. I think the next person who leads from this legislature needs to have the ability to work with everyone to get things done. And I've shown in my history, in terms of the organizations I've been a part of, not only had the ability to be president of all those organizations at some stage, but to work with everybody on the board, whether you're Democrat, Independent, or Republican, to get things done. I'm all about not just having the title, but getting work done for those who I represent, and also those who are not in my district. I'll be working with them because there's some 600 bills that are normally introduced in the legislature every year. So I'll be working with senators from rural Nebraska, South Omaha, North Omaha, to get things done for the citizens of my district as well as the state of Nebraska. I've shown I can get that done, and I want to continue to lead and serve in the legislature.
Well, I want to thank you both for answering all of our questions tonight. Great, quick forum. So this concludes the forum for Legislative District 11. Again, thank you both for participating. For the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I am LWVGO co-president Rebecca Armstrong Langle, reminding you to inform yourself about the candidates and the issues. We will have our voters guide available on our website, lwvgo.org, and on vote411.org in early October. So we really encourage you to learn more about these two candidates as well as all the other candidates statewide that are running by using our voters guide. And also make sure to get your mail-in ballots back to the Election Commission before November 3rd if you are voting absentee. And remember, there are drop boxes if you are not wanting to put them in the mail, or if you're too late. Make sure you really allow a week for them to be in the mail. So vote by mail or on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd, and go vote Omaha. Thank you.